Santa Clarita Valley history spans many decades, centuries. Santa Clarita City history doesn't. I'm Leon Warden, and this is Legacy, Santa Clarita's Living History, brought to you by the Santa Clarita Valley Historical Society, the SCV School and Business Alliance, and Valencia Bank and Trust. The City of Santa Clarita was established on December 15, 1987, a brand new municipality in an already established area. With us this evening is the man who was the original chairman of the City Formation Committee, and he went on to become elected to the very first City Council in Santa Clarita, and he held that position for 10 years. I'm talking about Carl Boyer. Welcome to the show.
It's good to be here, Leon.
Now, in the beginning, on that day, December 15th, 1987, how many people lived in the City of Santa Clarita?
In theory, according to the signposts, 147,228. That's 3 times registered voters. In reality, about 110,000.
So we had more registered voters than average?
Yes, we did, by far.
Now, I understand that, well, how many cities are there that are born when they're already that big?
They aren't. Richard Dixon, who was the CAO of Los Angeles County, described this very aptly as the largest newly incorporated city in the history of humankind.
Really?
Yes.
Do you know how many people there were, like, for instance, in Los Angeles when that city was formed?
About 2,500.
Okay. Now, we've heard a lot about the need for roads. Back in the 1980s, it was a time of growth. What, to you, was the big reason for forming a city? Why do it?
I've got to be honest with you, and I think it's the reason why it took so long, because it wasn't a sexy reason at all. It was, local government was too far away. It was a long-distance call. They met in the daytime. You couldn't go to a public hearing without taking a day off of work. That's why I got involved.
Mm-hmm. How'd you get in? I mean, why do it? Why personally to you? What was the interest?
One afternoon, Friday afternoon, I got a call from a neighbor saying, "Do you know there's going to be a zone change across the street from us?" I didn't know anything about it. Mm-hmm. I thought there were supposed to be more condominiums of the same project in which we lived, and turned out they were going to try and put in an automobile body shop. When I had to go downtown Los Angeles twice within 5 days, take a day off of work to sit through a hearing all day long, I began to think that this was not a real good deal for us.
Right.
And when that same piece of property went through 4 different owners and 4 different sets of hearings over a period of 3 years, I began to think it was a worse deal for us, and that was when I started talking about city incorporation.
Mm-hmm. When was that? When did you start?
That was 1967.
Okay, well, it took a while to go somewhere. What happened in the interim?
Well, we tried to improve government, the government that we had. I was a government teacher, but like most government teachers, I was totally ignorant of local government. Mm-hmm. I had been trained in national government, a little bit in state government. So my only concept was to try to improve what we had. And for 2 years, I really tried to do that. And finally, one time I just said, we need something better than this. And a local attorney, a fellow named Tom Davis, said, well, city. So I looked into it.
Okay. That was kind of a switch, though. I mean, I seem to remember that you were elected supervisor of a county that didn't exist.
In 1969, I started talking about a city, and a lot of people said, well, we like county government. We don't want an extra layer of taxes. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I didn't know how to explain, how the taxes were structured. So I did what I could to help the people, and besides, county government should have accomplished what we needed to do, which was to have local meetings nearby during the evening when it was convenient. And the government would be a local phone call away. So yes, I worked very hard and very eagerly on county government, and was elected county supervisor, although they never gave me a certificate of election.
Now that was in 1976.
Right.
Right, and then they tried again in 1978.
Yes, Los Angeles County used its muscle and got a law passed saying that we couldn't do it again. We snuck in under the wire, quite literally, did a petition campaign and got about 8,000 signatures or 9,000 signatures in 6 weeks because Canyon County was that popular with the people.
Now that would have been called Canyon County, and what area would it have included?
It would have included from the Newhall Pass north to the Kern County line just above Gorman, and would have included Acton and Aqua Dulce as well.
Okay. Now then, when you came back basically 10 years later and decided to try to form a city, the city ended up including much less territory than that.
Yes. A city has to provide fire protection to all of its territory. And there was at one time when we were paying a 78-cent tax rate as opposed to the dollar total that we pay now. We had to pay 78-cent tax rate for fire protection. And that would have meant a big increase in taxes on unoccupied land that people were not planning to develop in order to provide fire protection for the whole city. So we really couldn't do it. We had to cut down the size of the incorporation to the territory that was already included in the fire protection district.
Okay, so when the original city was going to be 90 square miles, as I recall, and it got pared down to what, about 39?
Yeah, 39.4.
So the areas outside those 39 square miles were not in the fire protection district? Is that how that was?
No, we actually included just about all the fire protection district, and it was Ruth Bonnell that cut us down.
From LAFCO?
Yes, the Local Agency Formation Commission.
Right.
Unfortunately, we needed the permission of the Local Agency Formation Commission to get on the ballot, and so that's what we had to do. We had to accept their boundaries or go another 10 or 15 years to without any local government.
Well, why do you think they wanted to cut back the size?
The developers didn't want any part of local control.
The property owners with land that was not yet developed.
Right.
Okay. Now then, when you did form the city, well, during the campaign, you headed the Formation Commission, you headed the Formation Committee to form the city. Was it a hard sell?
No, I think that we were extremely confident that we would win. We had already won Canyon County twice, in spite of the fact that the taxpayers had been told it would mean a huge increase in taxes by Baxter Ward, who was our county supervisor at that time. We knew that people wanted local government. The big problem was convincing a few people that forming a city did not mean that you were going to pave everything over. City was local government. That's all it was. It was the people here having our own voice and our own representation. But we had to work pretty hard on that.
Do you think people thought that by forming a city somehow they'd be able to stop or slow down the growth of the 80s? Or?
Yes, I'm quite sure they did. As a matter of fact, I did. I did not realize the significance of the more recent Supreme Court cases, which basically said that a property owner has to be allowed to develop his property to the highest and best use.
Right. Now that cityhood election, that was in November, if I remember correctly, so it was a general election and had a rather high turnout.
Right.
What was the outcome, number-wise?
I don't remember the precise numbers, but it seems to me like we had somewhere around the 40% turnout, and the top 8 vote getters each got 3,000 or more votes. I don't remember how many Buck McKeon got, but he was the top vote getter. Okay. And then that night, I think because of the way that I had seen Kenny Hahn kicked around by the County Board of Supervisors all these years, and he was a guy with whom I had political disagreements, but I admired him personally a great deal. I convinced the other council members that were elected that night that we should decide who the mayor was going to be by strict rotation, and we've pretty much followed that almost ever since.
Now, I seem to recall that people voted for a couple of things that night, both city formation and then to not carve the city into electoral districts.
Yes, almost all of the council candidates, and there were 25 of us, agreed that electing council members at large was the best thing. That if we elected council members by district, which would have been after the first election if districting had been adopted by the people, it would have been a very parochial attitude, and that it would be a lot better if the council members knew that they were responsible to the entire city and not just to their own local district.
Right. I guess actually I should say there were three things that were voted on locally that night. There was the city formation, then there was the decision to do it at large,
right.
And then of course the council members. Now,
right.
Why did you decide that you personally wanted to be on that first city council?
You know, I'm not so terribly sure I really did want to be on that first city council. It was widely expected that we would fall flat on our faces, that it would be a disaster personally for the people who were elected to the council. Mm-hmm. But I had been involved in saying that we should have a city for so long that I felt that I had the responsibility to run. And quite frankly, I probably had I had more experience than anybody else in elective office. I'd served in school board spot, water district spot. I had a lot of contacts in the legislature as a result of years and years of working on county formation and cityhood. And so I felt that I could be useful.
Right, you were on the College of the Canyons board, the Santa
Yes.
Clarita Community College District board, mm-hmm. Right? What water board did you serve on?
The Castaic Lake Water Agency.
Okay. That was in the 70s?
That was in the early 80s.
Early 80s, okay. Now, when you made the decision to run for that first city council,
right,
you stepped down as the chairman of the formation committee.
That's correct.
And I think it was Art Donnelly who stepped in?
Art Donnelly stepped in, and they did a fantastic job of carrying on the campaign. But also the campaign was carried by all 25 of the council candidates. Mm-hmm. And that was one thing that we knew was going to happen. We knew there would be a large turnout, a lot of people running for the council. It always happens the first election. And I can remember, for example, when the Los Angeles Community College District was formed, there were over 100 candidates for the 5 board seats. Mm-hmm. And so we knew that the council candidates would really carry the message to the people. And I did. I walked door to door as much as I possibly could during that campaign.
Right. Now, the top vote getter you said was Buck McKeon. Right. And then I think it was Jan Haidt.
That's correct.
And then
Joanne Darcy.
And then Joanne Darcy. And then there was you, and there was Dennis Kuntz.
Right.
I think he was a retired firefighter. Is that
right.
Yeah. Now, the big day comes, and you have that very first city council meeting. I think it was at COC.
Yeah,
right?
in the gymnasium.
And one of the first things you did was take action, I forget exactly how, but take action to protect some oak trees?
Right. We had an emergency oak tree ordinance up before the council, and I think it was supposed to be ordinance number 2 or number 3 or something like that. Mm-hmm. Very typically, ordinance number 1 is simply an ordinance that says that we hereby adopt all the present ordinances existing in the county as our city ordinances.
Right.
Well, during the break, after we'd had the initial celebration and a few speeches and what have you, I heard that somebody had called and told his partner that you better get those oak trees chopped down tomorrow morning early because they're going to pass an oak tree ordinance tonight. Mm-hmm. So I asked the council to move it up to be ordinance number 1. And I think that's been kind of emblematic of what we've done in this city. We have tried pretty hard to deal fairly with the environment. And we had Fred Bien, because it was an ordinance that the sheriffs had not had time to see yet. Fred Bien was our first city manager, and he went out in the snow in his fancy shoes and got himself pretty well soaked, but in the process saved the oak trees.
And this was on the morning after December 15th?
That's right.
It was on December 15th,
yeah.
The evening meeting, right. So the oak trees were saved. They didn't get out there and chop them down in the morning.
No, they didn't.
Okay. I'm sure setting up the new city was quite a challenge, and you went out with Patty Shea from the Signal and showed her a couple of places that are of interest. Let's take a look at those now.
Okay.
I'm standing with Carl Boyer in front of a shopping center at 21021 Soledad Canyon Road in Canyon Country. Mr. Boyer, can you tell me why we're here?
Yes, Unit 101 right here behind us is the first city hall that Santa Clarita rented when we became a city in 1987.
How long were you here?
We were here about 6 months with an ever-growing government and an ever-growing number of employees. It got so crowded that at one point we had the city council, the city attorney, and the city auditor all sharing one desk.
Where did you hold your council meetings?
Council meetings were frequently held at Arroyo Seco Junior High School, but there were times we held them anywhere we could. And at one point, we actually had a council meeting in an empty room over at the old Saugus schoolhouse, which was turning into a commercial area at the time. And I don't remember interior walls in that place. There was no heat. And the council table was an old door that Sharon Hormel of the Signal had given to us. We'd gone out to a hardware store and bought some legs and attached them to that door to make a council table.
A few months after city formation, you moved into this building on Valencia Boulevard in Valencia. Didn't this used to be a bank building?
Yes, it was. It was a building occupied primarily by Valencia National Bank, which later became Valencia Bank and Trust.
Did the city use all 3 floors at the beginning?
No, we moved our 10 desks into the 3rd floor, bought a little bit more furniture, and then gradually expanded to occupy more of the building.
I understand after the 1994 Northridge earthquake that this building was red tagged. How did the city government function?
We moved into tents right here in the parking lot. We had the city council, the various city departments, and everything right here in tents. And that's where George Pedersen and George Carvalho ran the city.
Again, another unique situation for city council meetings. How did the council meetings happen and where did they occur?
Well, the first couple after the earthquake happened right under the tents. And indeed, in the very first one was, I believe, the morning of the next day, we had a meeting and we all stood around with Donna Grindy in the middle of the council huddle, turning to each of us as we spoke with a tape recorder in hand. And then we had one a day or two later sitting at tables all huddled on a cool evening in the warmest jackets we could find, which weren't too fancy. And I remember being lambasted by someone who said, "Why aren't you guys dressed in shirts and ties?"
Thank you very much, Mr. Boyer. This is Patty Shea for Legacy.
Well, now certainly finding the facilities was challenging. What other kinds of challenges, maybe procedurally or dealing with the law or whatever, what other kind of challenges were there, maybe things that you didn't expect to run into?
You know, one of the things that we didn't expect to run into was the fact that we were national news, incorporating a big city. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people, I think some of whom were probably very talented, wanted to come to work for us. And they tried to call us. Nobody could tell them through information where Santa Clarita was. Mm-hmm. Post office didn't know where Santa Clarita was. So we had a bit of a time. In 1991, when I was mayor, I had to write a letter to National Geographic and point out that they had left Santa Clarita out of their 1990 atlas.
Yeah, I remember those days when I think you'd call information phone company. That was a challenge.
Oh, yes.
You run into that?
All the time. And finally, we got somebody who was willing to sit down and work with their computer and get us listed. Mm-hmm.
Now, you mentioned Fred Bien, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. He was the original interim city manager. And then I think the city council hired George Carvalho to be the first permanent city manager in 1988. How was that selection done? I mean, maybe it would be of benefit to talk about exactly how the city government is structured in terms of the staff answers to the city manager, which then answers to the council. What is the role of the city council?
The city council makes policy, and the city manager essentially runs the city according to that policy. Mm-hmm. And of course, if the city council doesn't like the way the city is being run, they can change the policy, or for that matter, get a new city manager. We were very fortunate when we got started that we had a lot of help from the League of California Cities and the California Contract Cities Association. They just came forward and volunteered, and they helped us to find Fred Bien very, very quickly. Mm-hmm. And Fred Bien helped us with the process of hiring a permanent city manager.
Right. So the council makes the policy. What kind of What were the things in your 10 years on the council, maybe some of the things that you're most proud of accomplishing?
I think the thing that I was proud of accomplishing was simply local government, a government that had a good reputation, a government that had, I think at all times, at least 4 council members that were really on the ball.
I think there was maybe something that you didn't accomplish that you would have liked to have seen happen. I think if I say maybe something like
You're talking about house numbers.
23920,
Right, right.
the address of City Hall.
That's okay. I'm kind of hoping that maybe John Boston will run for the
You
city
wanted to
council
shorten
sometime.
those house numbers, right?
Yeah. John Boston one time wrote a column that he could get everybody to change their middle name to Cougar Melon. So I'm gonna promote him sometime, and maybe he'll get the house numbers changed.
What was that about?
That was about something that I guess I was the only person in the valley that was really thinking about it, and that was creating that stirring spirit that we were Santa Clarita. We weren't going to be part of LA County any more than we had to be, and frankly, I resented 5-digit house numbers because they were imposed on us by LA County, who did it, quite frankly, in the middle of the night one night.
Well, yeah, those house numbers are like measured from downtown LA or something. What does 23920 mean? I mean, it's a distance, isn't it?
It means that it's 239 blocks west of downtown LA.
So we make City Hall number 1, count everything out from there.
I'd be satisfied if City Hall was
valley or something like
119, as long as it's somewhere in this valley we get started. But I tried to do it at a time when we were being forced to change area codes. I tried to put forward a procedure whereby house number changes would be very, very painless, and I got shouted down before I could even explain the process. So,
Are house numbers in your book? You're writing a book.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
I'm writing a book about the incorporation movement, the new county movement, and the early history of Santa Clarita as a city. And yes, house numbers are in the book.
I want to read something out of a draft of your book, and I thought this was well said, and maybe it speaks to your philosophy on government. At least that's how I read it. It says, "What does the federal government do for you every day? It's local government that keeps the streets safe and educates your kids or forces you to send them to private school. Except when some mad person convinces 19 hijackers to kill a lot of people," referring, of course, to 9/11, "the rest of it doesn't really matter." You're obviously a very strong local control person. I mean,
Absolutely.
Does that sum up who you are?
Sums up who I am. It sums up a large part of my teaching career, and it sums up why all the city council members in San Fernando Valley that went to public school are my ex-students.
You've got some famous ex-students from San Fernando High, don't you?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Who are they?
Well, Tony Cardenas and the president of the Los Angeles City Council, some of the San Fernando council members, Diane Diaz from Channel 4. Some of those kids are doing pretty well.
Probably had an influence that's spreading.
Yeah.
Beyond local government, though, you do have some interests. Healing the children.
Yes. I've been involved, my wife has been more involved than I, in healing the children for about 8 or 9 years now.
Tell us what it is.
Well,
I know you were president of the state group and the national group. What is
Yes, it's an organization that's worked in about 80 countries so far, putting together volunteer foster parents and volunteer doctors and volunteer hospitals to provide donated medical care to kids who just simply can't get it where they live.
You brought some video for us to see of Ina.
Yes.
Why don't we take a look at that and you tell us what we're seeing.
I'll be glad to. This is Ina Shakhmatova arriving from central Russia on the Asian side of the Ural Mountains. She was brought here by Timmy DeBusk, a Continental Airlines employee. And as you can see there, she has no left foot. She was born without it, and she had a bone problem that was going to kill her if she didn't get an operation that could only be had in either Michigan or California. My granddaughter, Kylan, really loved to play with Ina, and I think that having a child in our house at that time was really good for Kylan as well. Here you can see Ina being taught to walk. Chris, my wife, is teaching her to walk, spent countless hours over 5 months, and those are Ina's first steps. That was a huge thrill. And you can see how happy she was.
Yeah. Very cute little kid.
She was really angry after the operation, and as soon as she took her first steps by herself, she realized why she had gone through everything. And there you can see she's playing soccer. She's learning to kick a ball. She's learning to run. She can throw. Look at her run. Look at her run. With only 1 foot of her own.
Amazing.
And there she is going back to Russia. That was really hard to live with. Chris took her as far as Houston, and then Continental Airlines employee took her back to Russia.
Have you seen her? That was 1995, I understand. Have you seen her since?
Yes, she's been over 4 or 5 times since because she has to get a new prosthesis as she grows.
As she grows up,
yeah.
sure. How
and
many
it's
other
been a
kids have
real
you helped?
pleasure to see her grow up to be a real young lady. We've had 5 others, and
Really?
from 3 from Guatemala, 1 from Colombia, and 1 from Mexico. The one from Colombia was our first child, and she was an extraordinarily cute little 2-year-old who had open heart surgery. We keep in touch as best we can with all the children, and now she's a really pretty 10-year-old kid.
Right. You've been involved in the Sister City effort. I understand that you went to Ecuador. There's a city there that you're trying to make a sister city of Santa Clarita.
Yes, we've already signed the agreement with Tena, which is in eastern Ecuador in the Amazon region, where the dugout canoe is one of the best methods of transportation. As a matter of fact, it's the only method of transportation in much of the area, although they'd like to build more roads. In that respect, they're very much like we are.
So you've gone off the city council, but you haven't given up the civic enterprises.
Not one tiny little bit.
I'm afraid we're out of time. I know there's a lot more to talk about, but we're out. And for all of you out there, for all your Santa Clarita Valley history needs, visit scvhistory.com on the internet, or stop by the Saugus train station in downtown Newhall, weekends 1 to 4. This is Legacy, Santa Clarita's Living History. I'm Leon Warden. Good night.